This is SpaceTime, Series 28, Episode 138, for broadcast on the 24th of November 2025. Coming up on SpaceTime, mysterious structures within the Earth's mantle that may hold clues about life itself, a new unprecedented view of our Milky Way Galaxy, and those stranded Chinese taikonauts have now safely returned to Earth. All that and more coming up on SpaceTime.
Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
A new study may provide scientists with fresh clues to explain why planet Earth evolved with just the right sorts of conditions needed for life. For decades, scientists have been baffled by two enormous enigmatic structures buried deep inside Earth's mantle. These structures are so vast and so unusual that they defy conventional models of planetary evolution. Now, a report in the journal Nature Geoscience is offering a striking new explanation for these anomalies and the role they play in shaping Earth's ability to support life. The structures are known as large low shear velocity provinces and ultra-low velocity zones. They sit in the boundary zone between the Earth's mantle and its molten liquid outer core, some 2,900 kilometres below the surface. Large low shear velocity provinces are continent-sized blobs of dense hot rock. There's one directly below Africa, and the other is perched under the Pacific Ocean. Ultra-low velocity zones are thin molten patches clinging to the core like lava puddles. Both types of structures slow seismic waves dramatically, signalling unusual composition. The study's lead author, Yoshinori Mikizaki from Rutgers University, says these aren't random oddities, but fingerprints of Earth's earliest history. He says if scientists can work out why they exist, they can understand how the planet formed and why it became habitable. 4.5 billion years ago, the proto-Earth was impacted by a Mars-sized body which we call Theia. The impact turned both bodies into a molten magma ocean. As it cooled, scientists expected that the planet would differentiate, lighter elements on the top, heavier ones like iron towards the centre. The mantle itself would form distinct chemical layers, similar to frozen juice separating into sugary concentrate and watery ice. But seismic studies have shown no such strong layering. Instead, large low shear velocity provinces and ultra-low velocity zones form irregular piles at the planet's base. Miyazaki says the missing piece is the core itself. The study's models suggest that over billions of years, elements such as silicon and magnesium leaked from the core up into the mantle, mixing with it and preventing strong chemical layering. This infusion could explain the strange composition of both the large low shear velocity provinces and the ultra-low velocity zones, which could be seen as solidified remnants of what the scientists term a basal magma ocean, contaminated by core material. Miyazaki and colleagues think it might be coming from material leaking out of the core itself. The research is more than just deep Earth chemistry. Core mantle boundary interactions may have influenced how the Earth cooled, how volcanic activity unfolded, and even how our atmosphere evolved. And all that could help explain why planet Earth has oceans and life, while Earth's sister planet Venus is a scorching greenhouse, and Mars is a frozen desert. Miyazaki points out that the Earth has water, life, and a relatively stable atmosphere. On the other hand, Venus's atmosphere is 100 times thicker than the Earth's, mostly carbon dioxide, and superheated to over 640 degrees Celsius. On the other hand, Mars has evolved to have a very thin atmosphere, also primarily carbon dioxide. Miyazaki thinks what happens inside a planet, that is how it cools, and how its layers evolve, could be a big part of the answer. By integrating seismic data, mineral physics and geodynamic modelling, this study reconceived large low shear velocity provinces as well as ultra-low velocity zones as vital clues to Earth's formative processes. In fact, the structures may even feed volcanic hotspots such as Hawaii and Iceland, linking the deep Earth all the way up to its surface. This is SpaceTime. Still to come, an unprecedented new view of our Milky Way Galaxy, and those stranded Chinese taikonauts have safely been returned to Earth. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. astronomers have developed a new unprecedented view of our home galaxy, the Milky Way. The spectacular new image, reported in the publications of the Astronomical Society of Australia, represents the largest low-frequency radio colour view of our galaxy ever assembled. It captures the southern hemisphere view of the Milky Way in a wide range of radio wavelengths, in the process revealing the birth, evolution and death of stars in our galaxy. And so it provides valuable insights into the evolution of stars, including their formation in various regions of the galaxy, how they interact with other celestial objects, and ultimately their demise. The surveys were conducted using the Murchison Wide Field Array Radio Telescope in outback Western Australia. The work included GLEAM, the Galactic and Extragalactic All-Sky MWA survey, which was conducted over 28 nights in 2013 and 2014, and GLEAM-X, the GLEAM Extended Survey, which was conducted over 113 nights from 2018 through to 2020. The authors catalogued some 98,000 radio sources across the galactic plane visible from the southern hemisphere, showcasing a diverse mix of pulsars, planetary nebula, compact H2 regions, which are dense ionized clouds of gas, and distant galaxies unrelated to the Milky Way. The new image offers twice the resolution, 10 times the sensitivity, and covers twice the area of previous observations compared to the earlier GLEAM image released in 2019. The study's lead author, Silvia Mantovernini from the Curtin University node of the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research, says this new image provides a far more detailed and comprehensive study of the Milky Way, providing astronomers with a wealth of new data and insights. The low-frequency image allows astronomers to unveil large astrophysical structures in the galaxy which are difficult to image at higher frequencies. In fact, prior to these observations, there were no low-frequency radio images of the entire southern galactic plane. The work took 18 months and more than 40,000 hours to construct, using the massive crunching power of the Pawsey Supercomputing Research Centre to process and compile the data from the two major surveys. Mantovernini says it delivers an unparalleled perspective of our galaxy at low radio frequencies. Her research focuses on supernova remnants, the expanding clouds of gas and energy left behind when a star explodes at the end of its life. Although hundreds of these remnants have been discovered, astronomers suspect thousands more are still waiting to be found. This image allows them to distinguish between gas surrounding new stars and that left behind by dead ones, revealing clearer patterns in the cosmic landscape. The image also helps unravel the mysteries surrounding pulsars in our galaxy. Mantovernini says, by measuring the brightness of pulsars at different GLEAM-X frequencies, astronomers hope to gain a deeper understanding of how these enigmatic objects emit radio waves and where they exist within our galaxy.
So the Milky Way in radio band is a little bit different to what we see in optical. Instead of being completely shaded by the dust that is present in our galaxy, we can actually go through this layer and have a look at all the structures that are present in our galaxy. We have created an image that is able to see those sources in what we call radio colors. And what it means that every color corresponds to a slightly different frequency. And so we are able to see the different emission mechanisms that are taking place in that region. And so sources like remnants that are dominated by a non-thermal synchrotron radiations will appear in orange. Instead, thermal sources, for example, the regions where new stars are created and born, appears in blue.
And so this is giving you an insight into the life cycle of stars and I guess the galaxy as a whole in these wavelengths.
Yes, exactly. So thanks to this image, we are able to see regions where stars are forming, regions where they're interacting with other galactic structures, and regions where they die. So with one single shot, we are able to see the whole history of stars.
It's a very confusing image because so much of it is all on the same plane. You're looking directly towards the galactic center, which is sort of white because I guess there's so much activity happening there.
Yes, exactly. It's quite confusing because we are looking straight into the plane of our galaxy. So a lot of the sources will end up being overlapped with each other. And one of the big advantages of having these radio colors is that we can actually see the different emissions laying on the same line of sight. And so we can distinguish better the sources Of course, we won't be able to have a full picture because we need further information to disentangle sources that are on the same line of sight. But it's a great step forward in that regard.
You used the Murchison Wide Field Array Radio Telescope. It took both GLEAM and GLEAM-X surveys in order to get what you've got now, and a lot of supercomputing power as well.
Yes. So we used the observations taken from the Murchison Wide Field Array from the Galactic and Extragalactic Sky NWA survey, or GLEAM, that was observed in 2013, and then with the following GLEAM extended surveys in 2018. We are doing this because we want to be able to resolve the larger structures that GLEAM is able to resolve with fine details and the better resolution and sensitivity that the GLEAM-X survey is able to give us. So we have combined observation of these two surveys using modern algorithms on a supercomputer at the POSI Supercomputing Center. And after approximately 1 million CPU hours, we were able to generate the image that you can see.
Are you finding any interesting trends in the data? Regions of the galaxy where starbirth is just much more common than others, and areas where old dead red stars are more commonly found?
No, it's actually well distributed. So areas with born stars and dying stars are, I would say, uniformly distributed across the galaxy. And this is actually in agreement with some of the theories where supernova remnants, which corresponds to the final explosion of stars, can actually trigger the formation of new stars. So it is normal to find them in approximately the same area of the sky. Of course, we have regions that are more dense, like along the galactic center, and regions that are less populated.
That's Silvia Mantovernini from the Curtin University node of the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research. And this is SpaceTime. Still to come, taikonauts stranded in orbit after their Shenzhou 20 spacecraft was hit by space junk have successfully returned to Earth. And later in the Science Report, the discovery of new mRNA vaccines, which are 34% more effective against flu than existing shots. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. Three taikonauts stranded in orbit after their Shenzhou 20 spacecraft was hit by space junk earlier this month have successfully returned to Earth aboard the Shenzhou 21 capsule. The return capsule deployed a giant red and white striped parachute as it descended to a touchdown in China's remote northern Gobi Desert 5.5 hours after leaving the Tiangong space station. The returned crew used the same spacecraft which had days earlier flown their replacements up to the space station. Of course, that left the replacement crew without a lifeboat in the event of another emergency. But Beijing was ready. They had a spare rocket and the Shenzhou 22 spacecraft ready for launch and sent it up to the space station empty. The original Shenzhou 20 spacecraft's return flight was aborted after the crew discovered a window in the capsule had tiny cracks in it, most likely caused by the impact of space debris. The Shenzhou 20 crew had been on station for 6 months and were originally slated to return 4 days after their replacement crew arrived. The extra week delay meant their 204-day stay in space was the longest for any taikonauts aboard the Chinese space station. The Shenzhou 20 spacecraft will now remain docked to the space station while it undergoes further testing. Only then will Beijing decide what to do with it. The Tiangong, which means Heavenly Palace in Mandarin, hosted its first crew in 2021. This is SpaceTime. And time now to take a brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with a science report. A new study has shown that an mRNA-based flu vaccine developed by Pfizer is 34.5% more effective against influenza-like illness compared to current flu vaccines. The trial, reported in the New England Journal of Medicine, involved more than 18,000 people, half of whom were given the mRNA vaccine, with the rest given a conventional flu shot. The authors found the mRNA vaccine was 34.5% more effective than conventional vaccines against influenza-like illnesses, which are almost all caused by influenza A strains. There were not enough cases of influenza B for the trial to draw conclusions on the vaccine's effectiveness against that strain. Now, the authors note there were more side effects with the mRNA vaccine group, although the rates of severe and life-threatening side effects were low and similar in both trial groups. A new study has shown that switching to a vegan diet may help you reduce your greenhouse gas emissions thanks to ditching meat and dairy. The findings, reported in the Journal of the American Medical Association, examined 240 overweight adults who either put on a low-fat vegan diet or were told to make no dietary changes. The trial showed that the group on the low-fat vegan diet lowered their greenhouse gas emissions by the equivalent of around 1.3 kilograms of carbon dioxide per person every day compared to those in the control group. A new study has found that one of the world's most evil monsters, Adolf Hitler, had a micropenis and undescended testicles. The study, based on detailed DNA testing of the Nazi dictator's blood, shows that he suffered from a genetic condition known as Kalman syndrome. The testing was made possible after researchers obtained a sample of Hitler's blood from a piece of material taken off the sofa in which he shot himself. The findings by the University of Potsdam also confirms that he had absolutely no Jewish DNA ancestry. Racists had long tried to claim that Hitler's grandmother had a dalliance with a Jewish employer. But an analysis of the DNA debunks that myth by showing that the Y chromosome data matches the DNA of Hitler's male line relative. And if he had Jewish ancestry through an outside relationship, that match simply would not exist. The study also suggests that he had a very high disposition towards schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, again based on his genetic background. Popular World War II songs often mocked Hitler's anatomy but lacked any scientific evidence, and this new study has certainly changed that. No sooner had the story of Annabelle, the famous so-called devil doll, faded from the headlines than it's allegedly claimed yet another victim. Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics says, apparently, according to the rumours, the haunted doll hasn't lost any of its bloodlust.
Annabelle is this Raggedy Ann doll that's been around a few years that's supposedly possessed and can do terrible things to people. And it was owned by a couple named Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were notorious ghost hunters, and there was no such thing as a house that wasn't haunted or under sort of evil spells, certainly according to Ed, that they came across. So they were quite well known. They are the basis of the Conjuring films. Different name, but they're supposedly the same sort of characters. So they had this doll, this Raggedy Ann doll, which is called Annabelle. Ed and Lorraine died a while ago, but the others were sort of looking after, managing it, and the doll was being taken on it. Well, we don't know, I suppose. So, we can always ask, but I mean, supposedly when it was being displayed in Louisiana, there was a local fire and all sorts of things, which had no relevance to it at all. But more recently, a fellow who was taken around responsible for it, named Dan Rivera, who was a paranormal investigator, he died in his hotel room, and people saying, oh, Annabelle did it, Annabelle did it. So there was a lot of talk about that. His friend said, don't blame the doll. He did die of heart issues. He had long-standing issues with heart problems, and the doll was actually in a different room anyway, so I couldn't leap at him and sort of attack him. So that had a lot of publicity. So the Louisiana thing followed by this death that kept the momentum going, and the doll's still going around on a tour of the US. But someone else has now, a comedian has now bought the home and the museum of the Warrens, and that's where the Annabelle doll normally resides. And so there's all sorts of stories about them now, and are they going to be possessed? Are they going to be haunted? The media and a lot of believers are getting a good run out of Annabelle, and we just point out it's a doll. It's not haunted. It's not possessed. Anything you claim against it is either made up or coincidental. A lot of it's made up. But yeah, there are other dolls out there you could use. There's dolls that scratch people, and there's dolls that buy things on Alexa, and there's all sorts of sort of different possessed dolls out there. If you really want to sort of make a career out of dolls, you can.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. And that's the show for now. SpaceTime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favourite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. SpaceTime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the SpaceTime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies. or by becoming a SpaceTime patron, which gives you access to triple-episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details.
You've been listening to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.